Hey guys, Graham and Chris here with you again for an exciting World Series preview version of Out of Left Field. I'm up here in Charlotte, North Carolina on vacation. Chris doing the hangout thing in the Student Center over at Arizona State on the other side of the country, and we are excited to kind of have, of all things, we've got a bit of an East and a West Coast show talking about a central time zone, middle of the country World Series, man.
Yeah, it's a little bit crazy. We have the Cubbies going back to the World Series for the first time in 71 years, and we got the Indians going back for the first time in 19 years. Neither team has won it since the most recent team to win it was in the 1940s when the Indians won in 1948. About 3 years after the last time the Cubbies even graced the World Series.
Exactly.
So it should be a lot of fun. I think both of these teams have a lot to offer in the World Series. I think it's going to probably be a 7-game series. I don't think anybody's going to get blown out in this thing. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I think it's probably not the ratings bonanza that national television was really hoping for, being that Cleveland and Chicago are, in the grand scheme of things, not the largest of markets. Chicago obviously being a larger market than Cleveland. But from a baseball perspective, as far as anything else, I think it's going to be a whole lot of fun to watch.
Definitely. And if the postseason so far is any indication, we're in for a treat. I mean, it's been that way all the way coming through the divisional series, and we'll get into why we think that the divisional series really ended up having a really big effect on the National League Championship Series. And I think each of us kind of have a bit of a different take on Dave Roberts and his managerial job for the first time in the postseason with the Dodgers, and the potential that he cost the Dodgers a chance to really put the Cubs on the ropes and have a chance to be sitting in the Fall Classic right now. So let's put the ball in play on this thing, man. I know it's going to be a shorter show than usual because we don't have a lot to get into with the game starting tomorrow. We are just over 24 hours, about 27 or so hours away from first pitch in Cleveland. So when we left last week after we had our interview with Jen Powell, which first off, immense thanks to her for joining us to start off the series on women in baseball. It was absolutely fantastic to have her there. We were immensely grateful that she joined us, and a lot of thanks to you guys for listening and taking a look at it, sharing it, telling your friends. It's been one of our best followed and best listened to shows to date. So a lot of thanks there. You can find it on at OO Left Field on Twitter, or check out Facebook, Out of Left Field, hosted by Chris and Graham on Facebook. So we left. It was 3-1 Indians. The Blue Jays had taken Game 4, and when we were talking about the possibility that the Cubs were on the ropes of maybe getting bounced. They were looking really, really bad. They'd been shut out 2 games in a row. They're down 2-1, and then all of a sudden they come storming back, and the bats light up, and they just seem to catch fire and take off.
Yeah, those last 3 games against the Dodgers were a clear example of exactly why that Cubs team has 103 wins this season. Everybody was just hitting on all cylinders. You saw Rizzo get hot again. You saw Russell get hot again. And realistically, when those 2 guys in conjunction with the other bats on that team are really hot, there's just nothing you can do about it. I mean, there's no way to get around it. Both Addison Russell and Rizzo had home runs, I think, in each of those 3 games. I know Russell doubled in every single one of them. So, I mean, the Dodgers, in my opinion, had their best opportunity to put the Cubs away in that Game 4, and they really just kind of didn't do it.
And I'm with you. And what surprised me was, Julio Urias pitched decent. Certainly he's a young kid. He went 3 2/3, gave up 4 earned, almost made it through 4 innings. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch it. I was prepping for travel. We were heading out, the next day, so I caught what I could of it. Urias has a very bright future ahead of him, and
definitely.
And that's going to be important for the Dodgers' continued success in the postseason, because I think at this point we've seen that Clayton Kershaw is not going to be the driving force like a Madison Bumgarner or a Roger Clemens back when the Yankees were kind of pushing through things. Teams that we've seen that have a strong pitcher that takes them consistently deep into games and you rely on. He's great during the season, but they can't rely on him to push them all the way through. And they had a chance. You're exactly right. I think Game 4 was big. Urias was put in a situation that's very tough for someone that age, because that was the crux of that entire series. If the Dodgers go up 3-1, the way Rich Hill had pitched, you had to hope Kenta Maeda would come back pitching the way that he had done during the regular season, which we did not see him do. His performance lacked a lot of what really made him so good during the regular season. And, all of a sudden, the Cubs, put up 10 runs in basically a span of 3 innings, and to 10-2 huge swing. So from, barely getting, 6 hits in 2 games, they put up 13 in 1 game. And the momentum, you could feel the momentum shift, because now you're going to get Rich Hill, hopefully in Game 7, if you can get it that far. And Dave Roberts stated that he was going to have Maeda pitch Game 5 because he wanted to allow Kershaw the ability to pitch Game 6 on full rest.
Right, which, in my opinion, was the right answer. I think that Kershaw needed to pitch on full rest, but I think it was too little too late. Kershaw had been pitching on short rest the entire playoff, starting in the NLDS and all the way through that championship series. He'd been pitching on 2 and 3 days rest, and I personally think it caught up to him. I think that Kershaw let all of that pressure. He lets all that pressure get into his head. He lets his past as a playoff pitcher get into his head. It affects him. It bothers him. And the reason that is because of how he reacts when people talk about it. Somebody made the comment that maybe his new nickname should be Mr. April through September. And Kershaw was furious. He was absolutely furious, which shows you that he knows what happens to him in October, and he knows going into every start in October that that's his past and that's what his legacy is. And that Game 6, to me, even given the fact that he had pitched probably too much leading up to it,
right?
You can also say that was just Kershaw being Kershaw in October.
I don't know. I don't know if I want to go that far into saying it was just him being him in October. What bothered me out of all the rhetoric that we heard really is this idea of, oh man, Kershaw came in, had that one big save at the end of the NLDS, comes in on short rest, has pitches lights out, with a 1-0 win in game. I think it was Game 2, and that he has lifted the monkey off his back. And I'm sorry, that's not enough to do it for me. It was a great performance for him. You hoped it was going to be enough momentum to push him forward. But you and I talked about this during the week, that all it was going to take was for one bad game for that rhetoric to completely change around again.
Right.
I'm not going to sit here and say that right now this is kind of like, in NFL terms, a Marvin Lewis, why he can't ever seem to get over the hump. Well, last year it was because Andy Dalton got hurt. Well, now Kershaw, you can say, well, he pitched a lot, he was tired, and I do believe that had something to do with it, because not only is his arm tired, but his back is getting tired and getting worn out and getting sore, and he had a back injury that kept him out for longer than we've ever seen him miss in his career.
Yeah,
I was a lot harder on Dave Roberts, but I don't know. I'm not sure if Dave Roberts had a lot more cards he could have played to put the Dodgers in the position that he did.
I think he did. I think that that Stripling and Urias had better opportunities to win earlier in those series, both the DS and the CS. I think that if you don't pitch Kershaw on short rest in Game 2 of the NLDS, and instead you pitch Stripling or you pitch Urias, you still have an opportunity to win that game. I think that game 2 of the NLCS that Kershaw pitched again on short rest after that really great save that he got in Game 5. You can't take that away from him. He came in and he pitched really well on almost no rest. But he pitched one inning. I mean, he threw 7 pitches.
Right.
It wasn't like he went out and did work in that Game 5. He went out and got the save for sure, and he pitched really well. But he comes back in Game 2 of the NLCS and he pitches again. This time again on very short rest, 3 days really. And you start to get this feeling that, yeah, okay, he's going deep. He's going 7 2/3 into these games. But look at him. His hair is soaked. He's obviously physically tired. He's obviously physically trying really hard to keep it together. I think that absolutely Dave Roberts is definitely going to have to shoulder some of the blame. I think that in a Game 2 situation that wasn't really, I don't want to say it wasn't must win, because really every game is a must win, but really in a series like that where you don't have home field advantage and you're going to go back and play 3 games in a row in your home field, that Game 2 was less important to me than the Game 5 was that Maeda pitched. I think that Stripling Urias should have gone in that Game 2, let the cards fall as they might, let Kershaw go in game 3. He'll go in Game 4. At least you're going to pick up W's in those 2 games. And then at least you're split. You put yourself in a better position. Plus you have Kershaw to pitch Game 7 on full rest.
I can't agree with you on that. To me, I don't think if the Dodgers are down 2-0, all of a sudden the script is completely different. Now they're playing behind the 8 ball, knowing they have 3 games at home. They have to win all 3 of those games in L.A. to come back to Chicago to at least put the pressure on the Cubs. If it's 3-2 Cubs coming out of L.A., they take the 1 and they get to go home for 2. I mean, I don't see how.
But it was 3-2 Cubs coming out of L.A. anyway.
I understand that, but I think the difference that you have here is you look at the way that Kershaw pitched, and it's a 1-0 shutout. He carries the team. Both bats were relatively quiet on both sides, of the box with teams. We go into Game 3. Rich Hill comes out, pitches the best game of his career. I don't know if we'll ever see him pitch a better game. I mean, it was absolutely fantastic, and once again quiets the bats. That was the momentum point. And the difficulty that you find is because they had pretty much been pitching a 3-man rotation for the majority of the postseason, now you're bringing in a 20-year-old kid who he's pitched well in points, but he's never been one that could go. We've never seen him go really deep into games. He always seemed to get through about the first third and then get himself in trouble. And that's what we saw in Game 4.
Right. And again, I understand. I understand where you're coming from. And you have to go into a game like that knowing that you're going to use your bullpen, right?
Right.
The Dodgers have a strong enough bullpen to get them through that. They have Jensen. I mean, is strong enough to get them through that. To be honest with you,
Jansen, and I think Joe Blanton. Granted, he gave the grand slam to Miguel Montero, but
but that's not Blanton's fault.
Exactly, and that's my point. My point is that I want to believe that wasn't in his head, but he's a pitcher who can give them a pretty good stretch of innings. Who, for the most part, he's not anything that he was when he was a starter in Philadelphia, but he's still a solid long reliever that can come out of the pen and get you to where you need to be to bring in Kenley Jansen. And let's be honest, had that not happened, we would have been talking about a completely different championship series. So,
in my opinion, I think that Urias could have pitched that game too, gotten through the first 3, maybe 4 1/3, flipped the ball to Blanton. Blanton could have taken them through and probably held on in that game. I don't think there was any reason to pitch Kershaw in 3 days. I realize that 2-0 is a big hole, but it's not insurmountable, especially going home for 3 games in a row. Kershaw was a guy who needed to rest. Kershaw, especially with that back injury that you and I both know is still bothering him. And Kershaw is an arm that you need later in that series as the pressure really gets on. The fact that they were in a position that Urias had to pitch in a very pivotal situation in that Game 4 is hard, because you put Urias in that Game 4 when you're up 2-1 over the Cubs, and you put Urias in that situation, and now the thing going through his mind is, if I mess up, the momentum is gone and they even up. You even up in that series against the Cubs, and anything can happen at that point with only 3 games left possibly to play. Urias shouldn't have been in that position. It's great that he's 20 years old and he's the youngest starter in a league championship series ever, but not Game 4.
I agree, and not so much that I don't think Urias is enough to be there. I think he can handle it, but the Dodgers need to get a couple more arms that can take them deeper into series where you're not having to run one guy on short rest to try and make it work.
Right. And this is a situation, and I hate to kind of kick a dead horse here, but this is a situation where having Zach Greinke would have completely changed the face of this NLCS. Had his arm still been in the rotation, I think that the Cubs going down 2-1 would have been a far more dangerous prospect for them.
Agreed, and I apologize for the technical difficulties, guys. I'm actually back up here at my parents' house on vacation, so you were hearing a phone in the background there. So what do you say? So let's, we can go ahead and say that the Cubs certainly snagged a lot of momentum and are coming into a postseason pretty with a lot behind them, which they needed. They certainly needed, because the way that we had seen them kind of slipping made a lot of people concerned, because we weren't really sure which team we were going to get and just what in the world is going on.
Well, so, are we gonna get the Chicago Cubs who nearly go 5 games with the Giants with a depleted Giants? Are we going to see the Chicago Cubs who have to go 6 games and go down 2-1 against the Dodgers
Right.
Or are we going to see the Chicago Cubs who won 103 games in the regular season and dominated the way that they did?
Exactly. And if we flip around and go into the American League and look at another young kid, we get Ryan Merritt, who is a 24-year-old, called up when the roster is expanded, and Terry Francona looks at him and puts the ball in his hand and says, "Go get it for us." And he walks out on the hill, and Jose Bautista does what Jose Bautista does, which is talk a lot. And that's just about it.
Yep. And Ryan Merritt did go get it for him. The guy went 4 1/3 innings of 2-hit shutout baseball. I mean,
the only thing better is if he could have qualified for a win. That's the only thing better if he had qualified for the win.
And one more out, I think would have done it. At that point, would have went 4 2/3, which is beyond the halfway point of the game. Don't get me wrong, Jose Reyes is a great storyline for baseball, and it's great to see young kids like him come up and do well in the major leagues. But he's come up and he's done reasonably well in the major leagues for quite a while. Whereas Merritt came up just for the expanded rosters in September. You didn't hear his name in September much. I mean, it's not like he went out there and threw lights out baseball all through September and earned himself a spot on the postseason roster. Something he did impressed Tito. What that is, we might not ever find out. But I can guarantee you that 4 1/3 shutout innings in the ALCS definitely earned him a call back to come to spring training with the team.
I certainly think so, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him on the roster heading into the game tomorrow. I mean, take a guy who is facing a team that has already eliminated one of the better teams in the American League, in the Baltimore Orioles, which we discussed at length this year about the AL East, and then turned around and swept the best team in the American League in the Texas Rangers. I mean, embarrassed them, let's be honest. They absolutely embarrassed the Rangers, and we've seen that they have plenty of pop in the bats to make things happen. And granted, I think that Terry Francona pretty much knew that. I don't think that he was too worried about if all of a sudden it's 3-2 and we're going home, we can't finish this off. But if he can go ahead and use this young kid to finish it up, now he gets Kluber rested from the injury and his own game. He's got Danny Salazar rehabbing and potentially on the way back for the World Series. Everyone's getting nice and rested. We already know that they're nice and loose. So all he needed was this kid to go out and pitch just long enough and keep the game in a good enough spot where he can bring in his bullpen, manage his bullpen aggressively, because as long as he's up, that bullpen is going to be lights out, and he can throw them as long and as hard as he needs, because he knows if he ends it now, he gets almost a week before he has to use any of those arms again. They're all going to be fresh.
Right, exactly. And what you really got to think about going into this World Series is that the Indians don't have any pressure on them. I mean, yeah, the normal pressure. I'm going into the World Series. I'd like to win it. Winning a championship would be great. But look at the Cubs. The Cubs have 108 years of cursed baseball to overcome. 108 years since their last championship. And the Cleveland Indians might have 68 years or so of championship-free baseball and 19 years of pennant drought. But what the Cleveland Indians also have in their side is they're a lot like the guys from Clerks. They're not even supposed to be here today. I mean, you look at the way the Indians played the second half of the season prior to September, they're not supposed to be in the World Series. They're not supposed to be in the postseason. Those guys were supposed to go home at the end of September and sit on the couch and watch this, just like the rest of us are. But
and let's also be honest. I mean, they're a team that, I mean, the Cavaliers won the NBA championship last year. So the the need for a championship in the city is gone. The team wants to win, but all the pressure right now sits on the shoulders of the Cubs because this is the year that they are supposed to be destined to win. And everyone's saying if they don't win, and even you said this, that it has to be this year or it's not going to happen. And, I mean, everything points to Chicago that the ball's in your court, for lack of a better term. And, you know, if you don't get it now, you might as well just go ahead and expect that it's not going to happen anytime soon. So
I think last year was the year that they were destined to win. If my Back to the Future lore is up to date.
Well, yeah, it was 2015. Unfortunately, for Marty McFly, it didn't quite come to fruition. And so, all right, so let's get into the World Series now. So you mentioned this to me today, and I had seen it, and I was gonna bring it up on the air because I wasn't sure if you were aware that Kyle Schwarber, who has been talked about in trade discussions a ton earlier this year, there was a lot of talk of the Yankees wanting him in return for either Chapman or for Miller. I actually believe that he came from the Yankees organization, and the Cubs managed to hold on to him as well as the rest of their pieces and still pull Chapman for the second half of the season. So he has a rehab assignment today in a fall league and is supposed to be on a jet to Cleveland tonight to potentially be the designated hitter for the first two games to bring another big bat into the lineup, and which is going to be tough for Tito because, granted, there's plenty of scouting reports on him, but no one's really seen him for basically the last 9 months. So we're really going to get a chance to see how well he's recovered, if he still has the power in the bat, and if Joe Madden can just kind of have that magic that he's had this entire year with that franchise.
And it'll be interesting to see what Kyle Schwarber does, because probably the great storyline of this World Series is going to be if Kyle Schwarber comes in to Game 1 and Game 2 as the designated hitter and just lights up the Cleveland pitching. If he does that, or if he is successful to the point where he could be viably considered the series MVP, that would be the great storyline of this World Series, along with the fact that Chicago Cubs might take home their first championship in over a century. But one thing that worries me about this, and I've seen it online in the discussion boards that I visit, Major League Baseball discussion boards that I visit, and people are saying, well, Kyle Schwarber's coming back, and that's it. The Cubs are going to win this. Guys, Kyle Schwarber's been hitting rookie ball pitching for the last few weeks. Prior to that, he wasn't hitting it at all. So, yeah, it'd be great if that happened, but let the guy get some rhythm back. Don't be surprised if he comes into Game 1 as a designated hitter and gets sat down 4 or 5 times through the course of that game because he's not used to, lights out pitching from a guy like Kluber.
And that is the word, is that Corey Kluber is starting Game 1. I have yet to hear from Joe Madden who he is anticipating. Yeah. I think we all expect John Lester
I think that's
to be the starter. I'd be surprised if it wasn't, but it looks like Joe Madden is trying to hold off as long as he can before he has to finally name who it's going to be.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense. I mean, we all know that he's going to start Lester in Game 1. I don't think we have any delusion that it's going to be Arrieta or Lackey. I think that Lester I
actually find Hendricks. I think Hendricks would be Game 2, and Arrieta would go Game 3.
Yeah, I completely agree. Hendricks leading the league in ERA. Lester leading the league in W's, and obviously pitching ridiculously well this postseason. He's 2-0 with a .84 ERA. I think that we know it's going to be Lester. Lester Kluber is going to be a great matchup. I don't understand why Joe Madden won't just go ahead and put it out there. It's not like the Indians don't expect it to be Lester.
Right.
So you start your ace in game one. Everybody's rested. The series doesn't start till Tuesday, so everybody's going to be rested. This is mind game tactics from a really, really talented manager,
Right.
but unnecessarily, in my opinion.
I mean, unless there's a possibility that he really is trying to, unless he's really trying to consider, or if there's something that's going on with Lester we don't know about. But when it comes down to it, I think that you and I both agree, as we kind of get ready to draw to a close on this, is that everyone thinks that the Cubs are a team of destiny, and we've already discussed at length the last couple of weeks where their struggles really lie. That's the bullpen. I mean, obviously you're going to have moments where bats go cold, bats wake up. Hopefully for them, the bats have woken up. But what we're really going to see is how well can the Indians rotation, which for the most part has been depleted by a lot of injuries, how well can they stand up to these really big bats that Chicago has? And if they can keep the game close, how heavily can Terry Francona use that bullpen to hold on to games before they get burnt out? Can they go 5, 6, 7 games knowing that, all right, this is the last bit of the year, whatever's hurting, let's just try and not think about it. Let's put whatever we have to in it. If some guys are gonna go that route, just try and get this done so that we can go ahead and raise a banner in Cleveland. We can get out of here.
Yeah, I think that we're going to see just an amazing performance from the arms on both of these teams. But one thing, and you can call the Cubs a team of destiny all you want. You know how I feel about things like that, about people being destined to win or people being considered clutch. Hitting's hitting. Baseball is baseball. It's always going to be baseball. Yeah, some guys have a cooler head in extreme situations than others, but that's as close to calling a guy clutch as I'm ever going to get. You're never going to hear me say that a guy hit a home run in the 9th inning because he's a clutch hitter. He's a hitter, right? So calling the Cubs a team of destiny to me is superfluous. I think that what the Cubs have that the Indians don't have are bats. Yes, the Indians can manufacture runs, but against one of the best infields in the game right now, that's going to be a little bit more difficult for them to do. And when you have guys like Rizzo and you have guys like Russell hitting the ball as well as they do, I think that the Cubs definitely have the edge in this series.
And let's not forget the other big thing is they have a lot of youth. They have a lot of youth.
Right.
The Indians are an older team. There are some veterans on that team, and there are some veterans on the Cubs. But the good thing for the Cubs is the majority of the veterans are in the rotation, which is what you want. You want guys who have been there, who are level-headed. The bats are guys that are going to get out there. They're going to see pitches, but they're going to be ready to swing. They need to try and rein in some of that free swinging mentality. It got them in a lot of trouble against LA, and we saw that breaking balls seemed to be really fooling them. A lot of guys were being extremely impatient, and they were paying the price for that. But I'm not changing my pick. If had that series gone 6, 7 games, then I would have actually been concerned that the Indians could win this series. I still think that the Indians could, obviously. I mean, they're in it, so of course they can win it. But at this point, I'm still going to go ahead and I'm my pick's not changing. I think it's the Cubs to win, but they sure as heck should not make they should not hang their hat on the fact that this is going to be an easy go at it, because you're they're sitting and looking in the opposite dugout at a manager who's already won 2 World Series, who's already broken one big streak, and I don't think he'd mind leaving another one going for another season. Joe Madden has been in 1 World Series with the Rays. He lost to the Phillies. Phillies were clearly a more dominant team. And this is this is the first time that he really is going to walk in to a series, into a World Series, clearly the favorite to win. And I think he certainly has earned a ring. The beauty of it is that the Cubs have not bought a team. They have they've made good trades. They've made things happen out of their farm system, which is where Theo Epstein really rose the Red Sox to prominence, and it's why Theo Epstein is widely considered one of the best general managers and front office personnel in the history of this game.
Yeah, I think the only thing that Madden has to worry about is that his counterpart on the Indians is a masterful manager, as we've seen several times over the years. I mean, Tito Francona is just he's an amazing baseball manager, and when you see a guy who is the orchestrator of the only team to ever come back from a 3-0 deficit in a 7-game series, and is the orchestrator of the collapse of one of those long championship droughts, one of the 2 longest championship droughts in the history of baseball, standing on the other side of the field, it's got to put a little bit of fear in you. You got to have a little bit of nerves about that, because you know how good that guy is. But the one great thing I think about this series is that no matter what happens, a long championship route is going to fall. And if the Cubs do pull it out, as I said to you off the air one time, that in our lifetimes we will have seen the 2 longest droughts in baseball history fall. That of the curse of the Bambino will have died, has died, and now possibly the curse of the GOAT. And if that's not straight out of left field, I don't know what is. Guys, we love being here with you guys. We love doing the show every week. If you want to get in on the conversation, you can find us on Twitter at @OOLeftField. You can find us on Facebook, Out of Left Field, hosted by Chris and Graham. You can email us at @OOLeftField at gmail.com. We love to hear from you guys. We love to get you guys involved in the conversation. Graham, I'm glad you could be here with me today. I got class in about 5 minutes, so it's time to wrap it up. But stay with us, because there's one thing and that is that this World Series, just like this season, is going to come straight out of left field.